All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our third webinar of the semester. My name is Jason Blomquist, and along with Liza Long, we are your hosts as the fellows for the State Board of Education Gen AI Fellowship this year. This meeting today, we are talking about enhancing student engagement and learning with AI tools. And Liza and I thought it would be an awesome opportunity to start bringing in some other folks to showcase some of the work that we're doing around the state. So today we have three guest speakers. We have Roger Plothow from College of Eastern Idaho, who teaches in the English and Communications Department. We have Sarah Llewellyn, who is at Boise State, teaches in nursing, and Joel Glad from College of Western Idaho, who's the chair of their integrated studies program over there. And all three of them are going to share some of the tools and whatnot that they've got going on. So the way this is going to work today is all three of them are prepared. They're going to each have 10 or so minutes to present. And then if we have any specific questions for that presenter, we can take a few moments there. And then at the end of it, we'll just have some general question and answer and a few announcements for some ongoing items that we have for the state collaboration as well. So if without any further ado, if people are ready, I'm going to hand over the reins to Roger, who's going to kick us off.
Hi, everybody. Hopefully you can see the screen and the slideshow is up and running. You'll let me, Jason, we're good. Okay, so I appreciate the opportunity to talk to all of you, and hope this at least starts some conversations that maybe otherwise wouldn't have started. So a little bit of background. I am I am not a traditional scholar by any stretch. I spent 37 years as a journalist. I tell people I'm a recovering journalist, and so I left journalism, or it left me about 6 years ago, and I began teaching at CEI and at my alma mater, Gonzaga University, in 2020. And 2 weeks into my teaching, I went online for reasons that you all understand. I now teach fully online. I'm one of very few full-time faculty at CEI who teaches online. So my premise for this conversation is that our approach to engaging generative AI with our students should be pedagogical and not punitive. I'll try to talk about what I mean as I go through that. I will also mention to you that as a graduate of a Jesuit university, I'm a big fan of the Ignatian pedagogical paradigm, and that is the approach that I take in both my personal pedagogy as I teach and on this issue. I'll also mention some of you are familiar with the work of Bruce Tuckman. He talked about an approach in teamwork uses four approaches: forming, storming, norming, and performing. This is the storming part for me, and so we'll just see how it goes. So following the pedagogical paradigm, here's the context. This is a bit of an experiment that I'm currently running in English 102. So it's the Writing and Rhetoric 2 course that you are all familiar with. All of my students are fully online. This is an asynchronous course. And CEI, as you know, is an open enrollment community college, and so I get a wide variety of students from 16-year-olds in dual enrollment or early enrollment, all the way to people in mid-career and everything in between. So that's who takes my class, or all of my classes. So here's my experiment. I started this in the summer term, and I continued it in the fall semester. For my first assignment, my first essay for my 102 students, I require them to use their choice of a generative AI app to write the first draft of an expository essay using the 5-paragraph format, and I provide them all of this information. I engage with Purdue OWL. I have for my classes roughly 50 short lessons. I try to chunkify my lessons. So I have about 50 short lessons per class that I teach. And so I'm introducing everything from MLA to the 5 paragraph format to how to do research, all of that. Then they must substantially create their own work based on what, or not based on what AI generated for them. And so I provide them a full explanation of what I mean by that. Essentially, that means 80% of the final essay must be their own work. In one fashion or another, they have to make sure that the references are accurate. They need to enhance their references. And I provide specific feedback on that draft. And so I will identify some of the areas where they need to pay some attention. Here have been the results from the 43 students so far who have completed these assignments. So out of those 43, 16 received a 91 to 100% on the final essay. 14 of those used AI as directed. They made it their own work essentially, but they retained some of the AI, either the text or the research or a combination to a degree. Two of those 91 to 100% students scrapped the AI version altogether and restarted and made their own. So another 17 students received an 80 to 90%. 10 of those overused AI to one degree or another. So they didn't, it wasn't a significant, well, that's not the right word. It was a significant overuse, more than was allowed in the instructions. One of those who got 80 to 90 used AI as allowed, but still didn't. There were other issues with the essay. And 6 of those received this basically B-level score, scrapped AI and started fresh. And then there were 10 who basically submitted the draft the AI generated for them. And this is where we all go like this. So now that we're this far into the semester, I have now had students who have done 2 more essays without the AI draft. Now, in my coursework, I allow the use of AI, but I try to guide it on to the degree that they may use it. Here's some experience that my students have had now that they did the AI draft version and they've now done 2 without the AI draft. The average score on the AI drafted version was 85. The average score on the other essays has been 86. Draw your own conclusions. So here are some things that I have come away with in this experience so far. One is that I needed to teach this better. I needed to add more obvious steps on how they go from the AI draft to the final draft. I have corrected that. Now I've added some additional lessons. I've added some better explanations. I've provided some samples that I think are going to be more helpful. I have not solved, and I don't think there is a solution to the question. So when they submit the final essay, regardless, how much AI did they really use? Now, I know we have AI checkers. Some AI checkers are better than others. None of them is perfect. How do we deal with that question? And I can answer how I deal with it, but that is still very much an issue, I think. And in my deepest navel-gazing moments, I ask myself, is this truly a pedagogical approach, or am I just having some fun? And I think it's soundly based in pedagogy, but I'm open to other thoughts. And the last thing I'll just mention here in to finish the dreaded slide deck is that If those of you who are not familiar with her work, Dr. Sandra Jameson is really a leading scholar on this question of writing, teaching writing in college to college students, and the pedagogical approach with AI. I find her very thoughtful and really smart, and I hope that she becomes a leading voice in how we approach this. And so I encourage you, if you've not heard of her or if you've seen her work, to look her up and see what she has to say. So those are my prepared thoughts, and I will unshare.
Thank you, Roger. We already have a question in the uh, chat here. Nicholas asked, in terms of outcomes, what do you hope to achieve by using the AI this way as a first draft generator rather than, say, an idea generator or conversation starter?
I don't know. My interest is to learn and to experiment and to not assume. Um, the other thing is I'll be honest, to a degree. I'm trying to make a point that AI can be a mess, and that you need to understand as a student that if you're going to use it as a tool, great. Understand that it's a flawed tool, and that you can't just take what it gives you. But this is where I think I am I'm taking a very open-minded experimental approach to this.
Excellent.
I'll also mention there's a question here about what other courses I teach. I teach COM 101, English 101, English 102, and English 203, which is a business writing course. I use AI in one way or another in all of those courses. In COM 101, I have my students, for their final presentation, create a holiday that doesn't exist using AI, or they can choose random ingredients and have AI make a recipe, and then I have them do the research, and it's a presentation aids presentation. So they use slide deck or presentation aids on that one. And that was fun.
That sounds like a lot of fun, actually. I'd like to see how that goes. Are there any other specific questions for Roger at the moment before we move on? I'll take a second, see if anybody wants to pop anything in the chat or raise their hand.
Yeah, I had a question here, Roger. In terms of understanding the AI contribution, I guess my latest work with ChatGPT, it has pretty good metacognition about what it's done and why. So have you had your students experiment with some prompts, sort of reflection prompts about its contribution after the writing session?
So that's a great question, and that's part of the learning experience that I have improved on. The whole idea, I mean, if we're talking about critical thinking and engaging with AI, the prompting is the key part, right? How do you take what it gave you and then fix it, or identify what's going on there. So that is one of the areas where I'm adding some lessons. I have added some lessons on how to use prompts, and it's, most students are using either Copilot or ChatGPT, although, as we know, there are many out there that they can choose from. But that's I think, part of the engagement. I'd be happy to post a copy or provide Jason a copy that it can be posted of the description of the assignment, both the final assignment and um, the original, the draft. Happy to do that.
We'll make sure to get that shared out.
And anybody with thoughts, should be easy I'm the only Roger Plotho on the planet. And so uh, drop me a note. I'd be happy I'm really interested in the feedback here.
Thank you so much, Roger. That was really helpful to hear, and I appreciate you being willing to share. Our next presenter is Dr. Sarah Lou Ellen from Boise State School of Nursing, and we will hand it over to Sarah. Sarah, did you have anything you wanted to share as far as a slide deck or anything?
Yeah, I'll share towards the end. I've got some images. So thank you, Jason and Liza, for having us on today. But I have a new course that we're teaching in our new curriculum rollout. I co-teach with Eddie Zepeda here at Boise State, and it's called Innovation. And we're focusing on how to get nurses more interested in innovation, being at the table when decisions are made, contributing, or being the innovators themselves. And so the goal of this course is really to get nursing students who are really focused on that nurse is only a bedside nurse to think more professionally broad. What nurses can be, the potential of a baccalaureate prepared nurse, and then thinking towards a graduate program. So in this innovations course, we do use design thinking. We wanted to have a model that was a little easier for them to follow. And so we tried to build assignments and in-class activities that used different kind of pedagogies as we went. So we do have 2 assignments that are built for AI use, large language models specifically. We have one where they enter in HIPAA approved patient data, or they can use one of our simulated patients, put it in and ask the language model to prepare a nursing plan of care using a specific format. And then they have to evaluate. So they have a rubric to evaluate the AI output. And so they're looking at, did it get at the correct priority? Did it create correct teaching, interventions, those kind of things? And then they kind of reflect on it. So they get their care plan, they use the rubric, score it, and then they reflect on how well did it do. One of the goals of doing that is, can they use AI to help them learn how to do some prioritization? Is it effective in that way? Because we know students are inputting a lot of things into these AI models. So are they doing it correctly? I'm quite comfortable having them do some of these projects because they do have Jason's class 2 semesters before this, which is kind of a health information and technology course. And I know they talk about AI responsibility and ethics. So they've had some exposure to AI before they get to this course. So having assignments built using AI is not a completely foreign concept for them. So that was an interesting one. Most of them said, we asked also about prompting. If you prompted it differently, if you gave it different information, would you have had a better output? So getting used to, again, that use of the technology. And another assignment we have is having them write test questions in the format of the NCLEX, which is their licensing exam. So can AI generate NCLEX style questions? This is actually really helpful. It's out there in the nursing literature that students are doing this. They're having the large language models write test questions for them so they can practice. So we wanted them to see, does it actually work? Are they using, is it the correct format that comes out? Did it pick the correct answer? Do you think it pulled some of the most relevant content to quiz you on? So again, it's that evaluative piece of it. As they're looking at it, a lot of them found it to be super helpful, and they ended up putting other class content into it and making themselves a quiz bank. And we had them evaluate, did it actually know what an NCLEX style question was? Did it actually meet that accreditation style questioning? And so I think that was a helpful skill for them to take into other courses moving forward, knowing that it actually did quite well, and it does quite well with the format of some different styles of question. So they found that helpful. But they did say it didn't always get everything right. So I still have to verify. Before I'm using it to quiz myself, I still have to verify, which is what we want them getting out of it, right? Is that you have to evaluate what you're doing. We also did some in-class activities using AI. One was really focused on how AI is currently being tested and kind of pilot tested in healthcare, which is another reason we want the students to be familiar with it. We know it's coming. It's coming in some format, actually in probably multiple formats. So we had them look up, how is it currently being tested? How is it being piloted in different facilities? Who's doing what? And what do they think about it? What are their thoughts? There's a lot of talk to text for documentation. There's video based where there's cameras in the room screened in, and they're saying how often the nurse went in, if they turned to the patient. So it's actually auto documenting based on video footage that's kind of blurred for privacy. So we had a full discussion on what are these technologies? How would you feel about them being implemented? And we had a lot of great discussion on, I don't think they're there yet, or I'm concerned about the privacy of the data. I'm concerned about privacy of me being videotaped every time I'm walking into a patient room, and a patient being videotaped anytime they're in a hospital setting. And so, yes, it looks grainy on what I can see, but could someone change and alter that? So yeah, so talking about patient notes, yep. We looked at some different systems where they're either bot driven, so they're able to communicate with patients. They have a specific nurse identity that they're given that patients are responding to. So we're trying to get out what's kind of currently out there so that they're aware of it, because we want them at least to be able to sit at the table. They may not be super interested in developing it or being at, that stage of it, but we want them giving feedback and giving input. And so we did kind of build a lot of these class discussions on just observing it, looking at it, finding it, discussing it, looking at both the positives, what it could do, what it currently does, and whether we think that's good. And so that's been helpful. One thing we also did that was kind of fun, and this is where I'll share my screen, is because we're doing the design thinking process, we got to the prototype stage. Our class project was talking about call lights. So if you've ever been hospitalized, you push your call button and you have to wait. And we talked about how for patients that's frustrating, and how for the healthcare providers it's frustrating. Because I may walk in the room and they say, oh, I didn't actually need you, but they don't have a cancel button. Or I may walk in the room and they say I needed ice water. Well, it would have been good to know before I walked in the room. Or they don't get an answer for an extended period of time. So that was kind of the issue we were working through. What could a novel system look like? And so we asked them to use whatever AI image generator that they wanted, and they could pick it, and we asked them to kind of share what details. So this is just a highlight of possibly how poorly I prompted. The first couple slides are mine. Clearly, I didn't use good prompts because none of these look, I don't know what this call bell is. Like the patient jumps on it. Maybe here, it looks like a bouncy toy. I obviously did a very poor prompting. So then I thought maybe I'll use the word paddle, and now the nurse is hitting the patient in the head with the paddle. I don't know how that's a nurse notification, but here we are. So we talked about how prompting is important to get out the images that you're trying to get out. And so then we had the students as well. So they're doing these typically in tables and groups of kind of 3 to 5, depending on who's sitting at the table. And then they just plopped these into, we had a Google slide deck open that everybody could add their images and their prompts to. I kind of pared it down because we do have 80 students in the classroom. So there were a lot of really fun images. And you can see that this is what they wrote. It's the best we got. It's not close to what we wanted. So they tried and really didn't get much. Some of the groups, this looks nice, but it wasn't what they wanted either. And thinking, so you kind of can know what they want. That almost looks like a noose though. Based on that, the patient being actually able to push a button that says what they want. And so you can see how they were prompting and using different systems. So we had Canva, Microsoft, Pixlr, and they just were able to go through. A lot of them wanted a wearable call light, which actually I'm really interested in wearable for many reasons for patients in the hospital. But so they were thinking through all these different versions. These kind of came out looking like toys. So thinking as we go through, again, they kind of were trying to use an iPad size. So once they said iPad size, we did start getting that prompted a little bit better for what they were trying to get at. This was just one of my favorite images because the nurses in the background are not protected, but whoever this person is in riot gear, I don't know why that was in there. But you can see they kept trying. Now the whole bed is a call bell. And then we kind of came back and debriefed. She had a pig and a dog in hers, and she actually did prompt it pig and dog to see what would come up as they did it. So we kind of discussed afterwards, was this easier or harder to do? If you wanted to create a prototype of whatever their project is, which they could pick anything that they wanted. We were going pie in the sky because they don't actually have to do it. So did this help? Was this something that was useful for you? Or did it take you more time to figure out how to prompt it to actually get it to do what you want? And so that's kind of really where we got with that. Some of the groups ended up doing some AI imagery for their prototype and in their final project and their final pitch. Some of them just did hand drawings because they couldn't get the prompts to do what they wanted it to do, and it was more frustrating than it was useful. A lot of them, though, found that if they could get it right, it was way better than anything they could draw, because they're not art students. A lot of them are not artistically gifted, and so having a technology that can kind of create this image for you that is more visually appealing made sense to them, especially for a pitch, where they're pitching at the end, here's my idea, here's my product. And so quite a few of them did end up using some version of an image generator for their final project. So that's kind of where we are with that class.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate you sharing. We thought it was really interesting because I've seen a lot of folks working on the writing aspects of AI and the ability to think about some of the potential visual aspects, or another avenue to think about.
Okay.
So does anybody have any particular questions or comments for Sarah at the moment? All right, I think that was the classic count 10 to see if anybody has any questions. So we will have some general comments at the end as well.
My whole favorite part of really incorporating these ideas in is the students said, I think I can sit at the table. If nothing else, when they ask and they want nurses' opinion, I might actually go sit at the table now. So if nothing else that they got out of it, I'm pretty happy with that. So
Absolutely. Thank you. So our third presenter today is Joel Glad from College of Western Idaho, the chair of integrated studies, and he is going to share some exciting information about us. It looks like he's also put a link in the chat so that you can reach his Google Docs that he's about to share on. So thank you, Joel.
Thanks, Jason, and thanks, Jason and Liza, for letting us share these things. All right, so yeah, I'm gonna focus on how we implement AI training in our first year experience course at the College of Western Idaho. So we call it CWI 101. At BSU, it might be called Foundations. And some institutions now don't in CWI, or sorry, some institutions in Idaho have decided to kind of drop their first year experience courses. Others still keep them on, so it's kind of all over the place. But we found that this is actually, as ChatGPT, kind of created some disruption in 2022, and we're still seeing some, uptick definitely in student use. We're finding that this course actually is a really good opportunity to provide some like basic training and establish some consensus around certain things. And so we try to be very careful and deliberate in how we implement AI training in this course. And so this is what I'm going to discuss here. Like, it applies to all sections of CWI 101. And most students who come into CWI do take this course, and so they complete this training. And so something to keep in mind is like, and I'm sure you face this as well, like how we include AI in our courses is impacted by a lot of things. A lot of us think about like, hey, what do we want students to learn? Where are things going? But then for us, like one of the key like constraints is like if all students need to take this, how does that affect what we require, what we don't require, uh, what we're setting students up, to think about in other courses? That's kind of like the purpose of this course. So like we need to make sure like we're crystal clear on like, hey, here's some expectations around this, because some of your instructors are fans of GenAI, and they have certain policy statements that are open to it, and others don't want it in the classroom, and they have AI bans, or they're very restrictive. And so, how do we teach? How do we prepare students for all of that, right? So that's kind of like some background there. And so our strategy, this is what I'm sharing here on the slide, is like our course level strategy and how we tackle this. And then I'll zoom in to look at the chatbot practice assignment, so you can look at them more closely. So what we have here, we begin, when we get to, I think it's currently around week 4 in our 16-week version of this course, where we introduce students to our generative AI training. It does focus on generative AI, but it explains like, hey, here's machine learning, and then more specifically, we're going to focus on Gen AI in this training. And these are the OER chapters. I'll link to this at the end of the slide, but Liza Long and I worked on these chapters together. And it begins with like, basics, how LLMs work. We think that's important, like the students get a basic understanding of the architecture, because that really does help them just kind of grok, I think, better, just kind of think through better. Like, okay, when people talk about hallucinations and bias, these are things they understand from an architectural point of view. It's just built into, how these things work, and it allows you to like get a better handle on when they might be useful, and then when you run into some problems. Some very basics introductions to how to begin prompting, AI platforms and tools. This section needs to be beefed up because there's so much, and we have to really update these every semester, really. OER is beautiful here, we find. And then principles for using AI in the classroom. This is a new chapter that we're continuing to work on, including acknowledgement statements. So this is like, we're really trying to build consensus around this, like in order to align with academic integrity. We expect students to know, like, if AI impacts what you submit in your course, you need to include an acknowledgement statement. So we provide training around that. And then we have a short quiz to assess basic comprehension. Multiple choice, fill in the blank, kind of simple stuff here, formative assessment. And then we get into the chatbot practice. And again, the next slide will kind of zoom into that. We do have an opt-out option. Again, this is like, think about the course here. This is all sections of CDBR 101. And we're finding kind of like step forward, kind of talks about feedback loops. We're finding, we're surveying students about their comfort level and how they view these technologies. We're finding that there's a vocal minority that really like feel strongly about not using these in higher education. And we're trying to respect that and kind of meet students where students are at. And then reinforcement, this is going to be the updated version of the course that we're going to begin piloting in the spring. We're building in more reinforcement later on, where students can use chatbot like later in the week, that week where it's initially introduced, but then throughout the semester, like, we kind of put little tools and tools and rules sections like, hey, for this project, consider using AI to help brainstorm this or that. Upstream of the submission, you might consider it using chatbots to help with this or that, right? So we're kind of planting seeds, reminding students like, here's one way to align. Even with an AI ban, you can still use these chatbots to just think through, hey, what am I being asked of here, right? And then the feedback loops, we have a survey in the course on AI use, and I'll kind of share the questions. And then we've been surveying our faculty on our AI policy interpretations. And then what we do is we build this back into the principles for using AI in the classroom. We're like, hey, this is what your faculty are telling us around how they interpret the policies. And so that becomes part of the Gen AI training for the students. A lot of text on this slide. So this is our chatbot practice. We use in CBR 101, we use design-oriented thinking. It's like a career focus course, and they kind of, some of you probably heard of the Odyssey plans. I know I know there's a few sections at BSU that use this Odyssey plan framework from Designing Your Life and the foundations courses. And so we use that as a way for some of the key assessments to think about how to design the career. And this is where we introduce the chatbot practice, right? So step one, and I include, I'll throw this in the chat as well. Step one, we ask students to practice learning outcome unassisted. We found, we're tracking research here, and we think it's really important that if we're introducing this to students, and this for some, this is the first time ever using AI, we want them to like think through the problem and just embrace that friction unassisted, kind of wrestle with things. And Odyssey plans can be difficult. They can be challenging. It's a good opportunity to kind of like struggle a little bit. And then, turn to step two is kind of like, hey, now that you've had the training, let's use GenAI to augment step one. And then step three is to reflect, like, compare their unassisted practice versus the assisted practice, and to include an acknowledgement statement. And the step four we find is really, really important to like frame their initial uses of AI with these reflections, like discuss with your peers, right? Like, what did you find? And there's actually really interesting responses where some students are like, hey, this wasn't helpful at all. But then like a student will jump in, look at the chat and say, I initially I didn't have a lot of luck, but then I would practice conversation steering. I would like follow up and ask for this or that. And so students kind of like, they bounce ideas off of each other and or commiserate like, hey, this, I don't really need this in my education. Yeah, so the steps, I don't have a lot of time, but like, you can see the steps here around what this looks like. And this is the prompt here that we ask students to use. Again, this is like, they're just learning these things, so we want to provide some structure for them just to figure out. And ChatGPT and Copilot handle this pretty well. The last thing I'll mention for this assignment is that you'll notice we mention here in our language, we have institutional access to Microsoft Copilot. We have enterprise access. So that's our default option. But we say to students, you can use ChatGPT if you would like, but this is our safe and secure option, right? So I know at BSU, they have Gemini. Others of you, I'm not sure what your situation is, but that's another consideration is what tools you're using. Is the default option private and secure? For us, it matters because of the nature of this course. So responses here, I can show like a typical submission. This is kind of what it looks like for the most part. The student's attempt, this is actually a really thorough attempt. The Odyssey plan, it's a 5-year plan. That's kind of preparing them for the career. This is the results from their chat. This is like the result they like the most from their chatbot conversation. And then they have the reflections here, like, this student, and this is kind of typical. It's like, hey, I used this tool in the past. I didn't have a lot of luck, but after this training and practice, I feel like it's starting to make sense why this is useful. But some common findings here. I mentioned, this one's interesting. A significant minority say this is the first time they've used AI and they appreciate the basic training. This is probably different in different institutions, but it's shocking still how many students are like, I've never used these things. A significant minority, and I mentioned this briefly again, but they're really concerned about it interfering with their learning, and they're like, hey, I really don't like this. I prefer not to use these tools, right? And about I would say 0.5%, it's like one student out of 28 would say, I don't want to do this. I'm going to do an alternate assessment. We provide an alternate option for them. These are the questions we include in our AI survey. We're trying to track over time, semester over semester, like how students are adjusting to these technologies. current use, like how much, how frequently, and we're using multifactorial analysis where we can break this down in terms of gender, income level. Did their parents attend college? Are they first ones in their family to attend college? That kind of stuff, right? And we get some really interesting results. How they feel about their instructors, AI policy, is it clear? If not, we can use this survey and say like, hey, we can show this to the AI at CWI committee and say like, hey, here's a problem. A lot of students are confused. Let's do something about this. Comfort level, we could talk about this for a long time, but this is all over the place. Some students are like, hey, this is, makes sense. I use this for everything. Other students are like, I really hate this, and I don't want to be taught this, and I don't want to see it in the classroom. So what do you do with that, right? We're tracking what tools are using, and then other concerns. All right, contact info if you would like more. I have links to our OER chapters. This is the first year experience version, and then the first year writing version is in a separate textbook. So they're essentially the same with some of the framing's a little bit different. All right, I'll stop there for questions.
Joel, thank you so much. That sounds like an incredibly comprehensive approach. So yes, any questions, comments for Joel?
I just had to put in the chat that we've tried this out with Snapchat AI in our first year experience courses, and it actually works with Snapchat AI on their phones. So students really like this assignment and they have a fun time with it. And in our business specific classes, we do a little bit more even with AI, since that's likely to be something they'll be expected to do. So our first year experience business courses do even more AI work.
Joel, did I understand correctly that you specify ChatGPT as the app that for use?
Copilot.
Okay.
Yeah,
Our institution has like enterprise access to Copilot because we're 365. I think BSU has Gemini, secure access, but we say the students can use the chatbot of their choice if they're comfortable with using others. Yeah. It's a constant struggle, I think, when you're using AI in the classroom to figure that piece out is what tool are they using? How do we provide consistency and training around this?
That's what I was about to say. Is one of the challenges is that there's a growing disparity between the apps. So they're now starting to focus. Claude is going one way, and Perplexity is going this way, and so that's going to be part of the puzzle.
Yeah, Perplexity is great. I use we don't have it built into the template course, but I use it when we move on to the research part. We kind of move back and forth between the library, databases, Google Scholar, and Perplexity to kind of see the differences.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I once a month I switch. I spend $20 a month and I switch and go to a pro level AI. Perplexity so far is by far for my purposes for writing and such things, is by far the cream of the crop. It will generate an MLA or APA freshman level essay nearly perfectly with references and format and style. Be afraid. Or not.
Yeah, Don, I see Don's response in the chat. That for CBR 101, that frames a lot of our conversation is like, how do we meet students where they're at? How do we not make too many assumptions? How we provide access to the right tools? And then Liza and I are part of our AI at CWI committee. This is an ongoing conversation. What infrastructure does our institution need? Do individual courses need? different faculty have different expectations. How do we make sure that these things kind of work together?
One, I think COVID taught us a lot up here at LC that, I mean, a lot of our students are so rural and, we have we're the mountain town kids. And so like, we have whole communities that barely have internet. And so we're now want them to use another, web-based program to do these things. And what is the right one? And what is one that everybody can afford or everybody have access to? And we're a 365 school too. So Copilot would be the easiest for us, but I mean, that's definitely something that we want to make sure all of our students have a level playing field there. And it's definitely a hot topic of discussion now.
I have heard some folks, especially they're teaching in higher level courses or in graduate courses, who have chosen to make a subscription to a particular chatbot as like part of their reading list or part of their textbook. I'm not sure whether that's good or bad, but that's something that I have heard a few folks do in order to guarantee that everybody was working from the same spot. But to Don's point, that doesn't necessarily address some of those truly logistical and geographical issues where that might not even be available.
I'm going to have to slip away here in just a minute, but one thing I'll add: in my business writing course, I require the use of AI because 95% of businesses are going to be using it, and so I want to expose them to the process. It's a similar kind of issue. How do you try to create the experience that is equal opportunity and realistic and without making things messier? But business is messy.
Well, not to end the conversation, but since Roger is stepping up, I do want to one last huge thank you to Roger and Sarah and Joel for sharing with us today. Before we leave, and we'll have some time to continue to have some questions, I do want to make a couple of announcements around the AI Fellowship and the statewide work. We are debuting. We had a number of folks asking for a easier place to converse and share ideas and share perhaps some assignment ideas or just get input. We found that the Google group was not super helpful, so we have stood up and debuting today a new Discord server specifically for our AI interested faculty and educators in Idaho. I'm sharing that link right now in the chat, and we'll put that link out through our current Google group as well. So a place that can be a little more casual and a little more chat-based as far as being able to have some of these conversations. We also are, this is the final webinar of the fall semester. And as Liza and I are starting to think about what the spring semester sessions might look like, we would love to hear if you have any specific topics or whatnot that you'd like for us to plan around as far as 3 or 4 sessions in the springtime. So please do shoot those ideas our way as well. Will be trained on Discord usage to discuss AI. It is a pretty straightforward, old school kind of chat server. But please, if you have questions as you go, check it out. Come on in, and we will send me an email. I'd be more than happy to chat through stuff with folks if you have any issues. And I do think, Joel, you have a great point that maybe one of the big topics we can plan for is a AI detector conversation in the spring, and maybe a whole webinar around that. So those are my announcements. Does anybody have any comments or questions or thoughts about what we talked about today or moving forward that we could get into right now? I do think that the AI detector conversation is probably bigger than what we have a couple minutes left in this webinar for, but it's certainly a topic that clearly needs a larger discussion. So we will certainly plan on one of the webinars in the spring for that. It's a quiet group today, Liza.
It is. Yeah, there's the chat's been active though.
Yes.
I got to share how I do not like detectors.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
sorry, you guys, I'm so sick today. I told Jason he had to run this thing. He did a great job, of course. So,
Noreen, to your question, is anyone looking into uses of AI for STEM learning? I think that's a fantastic topic. I do know that there are a number of folks looking at that, and I just wasn't able to get any of them to join today, but we can certainly add that in as part of the topic. I think there is also a lot of interest in looking in a number of our universities right now, specifically at how to ethically use AI in research. There's a number of grants and groups getting stood up right now on that. So it's something we can keep our eye on and share out to the group as well. All right. Well, thank you all for coming. Like I said, please look forward to having conversations on Discord. Please don't hesitate to shoot me an email if you need help with that. Clearly, it's honestly, once you jump in there, it's pretty straightforward. But we will continue the conversation and look forward to learning from everybody as we move forward. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.